What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises and delivers on bringing you the very best guests in all of true crime. And we've got a low country reunion for you tonight. I'm looking forward to it. As we all know by now, Alex Murdaugh went from prominent attorney to convicted killer, and now there's a growing list of questions left in his wake, and perhaps the biggest of all of them, Stephen Smith's murder. Will it be solved, and will his mother, Sandy, finally get justice? The best guests today are here to break it all down. You know all their faces, but I'll reintroduce them. Eric Bland. He was selected for inclusion in the South Carolina Super Lawyers for a gazillion years in a row. For his excellence and recognition as a super lawyer in professional liability. He was one of two in the entire state of South Carolina with this honor. He also happens to be representing Stephen Smith's family, whose suspicious death was declared a murder shortly after Alex Murdaugh's conviction. He is host of Cup of Justice, a phenomenal true crime podcast that started with the Alex Murdaugh case. Sarah Ford, with the lovely looking hair, not to be confused with Amy Lawrence Lovely. Sarah Ford has served as legal director at the South Carolina Victim Assistance Network since 2017, where she leads a team of attorneys and advocates to provide direct legal services to South Carolina crime victims. She's a former South Carolina prosecutor, and she too is the host of an excellent podcast, Palmetto Prime Time. Not a host of a podcast, but the hardest working defense attorney in South Carolina, Amy Zimmercheck, the owner of AJZ Law Firm. She's been voted as a member of Super Lawyers continuously since 2019. She's had over 10 not guilties on felony cases, including murder and rape since 2009. And certainly not last, and definitely not least, but last today, Amy Lawrence. She fights for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day in her practice at the firm which bears her name, the Lovely Law Firm. She was also on MTV's Teen Mom 2 and has appeared on the Dr. Phil Show. A quick reminder, please follow us on Facebook, Insta, Twitter. Podcast STS is the handle, Podcast STS. You can support us on Patreon, and you can support us as a YouTube member. Eric Bland, how is your knee doing? You had knee replacement surgery, and saw you tweeting about it. How you feeling?
I'm still optimistic, but it really has been a hard road. I was telling Amy about it. It was more than I kind of bargained for and really anticipated. It's a pretty major surgery to begin with, but I had some complications, and I feel like I'm going to cross the threshold to start to feel better, but it's been a tough 30 days. I'm just going to be honest. A lot of different type of treatments and drugs and crazy thoughts that you get in your head about, you ever going to recover. But thank you for asking, and I'm hopeful.
And you are a physical specimen, and we got to keep you in check. But you'll be back in the gym.
He's lifting all those weights while he's going through knee replacement.
I'm trying, but I lost 18 pounds. That's what these chemical drugs do to you. They suppress your appetite. So
I found them for you, Eric. They're right over here if you need them. I got them.
You girls do not need to give up weight. You're perfectly fine.
And it just means we'll see more of your abs, Eric. Next question. I've got 3 for you in a row. How are the Satterfield children? For those who don't know, Eric was, and I guess still representing the Satterfields and working with them. Of course, Gloria Satterfield was the Murdoch's housekeeper who died falling down a flight of stairs. How are they, Eric?
They're doing well. We've recovered a good bit of money for them, so they're financially secure for the rest of their life, as they should have been from the start with Alex. Their money is safe. It's being managed by Merrill Lynch, so they have plenty of money to live on, and there'll be plenty of corporates to hopefully to live out the rest of their life the way it should be. And now we're starting to take more of an interest again, because one of the things we may talk about is Alex is crying poverty and is trying to get more money than what was agreed to be allocated to him from the sale of some of the home items that you may have saw, the couch and all the other stuff that people were paying ungodly amounts of money for. And of course, Dick Harpootlian is now coming in with his hand out saying, well, we spent so much money defending Alex that we should be recompensed for, our lodging at $25,000 a week that we were spending. So we have a judgment still for $4.3 million. So now there's going to be a hearing, I believe, on May 5th in connection with that request. And we intend to object, to say that it's really rich for Alex to start calling himself a victim when he's a convicted double murderer.
And do we happen to know how much the defense was paid for
Yes.
their work?
They were paid $500,000 to represent Paul in connection with Mallory Beach's DUI boating accident, which they never really had to earn because, unfortunately, Paul was killed. And they supposedly are getting $600,000 from the money that was released from Alex's IRA. Now, in all fairness to Dick and Jim, from that $600,000, they had to pay all the expert witnesses, which they claim are somewhere in the neighborhood of up to $200,000, plus their lodging costs for 7 weeks. So that's why they're going back in and saying it's unreasonable for us to have tried a first degree murder case, not a capital case, and only be paid a couple $100,000. And the other thing, Joel, is they've entered their appearance in all of the other charges for Alex, all the financial crime charges. And these women on here who are excellent criminal defense attorneys know that it's much harder to get out as a defense attorney once you're giving your appearance in a criminal case, as opposed to a civil case. The judge will sometimes let you out a lot easier. So they may be in it for a long time.
And Sarah Ford, you're a victim's advocate. Is Alec a victim now? Do you feel sorry for him suddenly that he's impoverished? And did Dick Harpootlian not make enough money?
To steal something from Amy Lawrence Lovely, bleep no, absolutely. I can't do it, Amy. I'm trying. I'm sorry. I can't do it. Bleep no, absolutely not.
Sarah's too sweet.
I'm not.
He's anything but a fucking victim, is what she's trying to say.
Listen to the argument, Sarah, that he made. He said that IRA money was legitimately earned by me, so therefore it should be mine. But what Justin Bamberg and I said, but the $8 million that you stole from your client, that's what you use to live on every day. So the fact that you put law firm money in an IRA but lived on stolen money doesn't make the IRA money yours.
It's not clean money. So
He's
he,
like,
correct.
LIFO, or whatever.
I like that,
it
Amy.
doesn't work. Yeah,
Right.
no, it doesn't work. He's not a victim. The money that he wants to use, whatever money he's got, needs to go back to the victims here. He is not a victim in any way under the law, in the morality in anyone's mind except his own. And to say that the money he has in his IRA is clean money, I think is a faulty legal argument. I think it's a crappy moral argument. I think it's a crappy person argument.
What do you really think?
I'll be quiet, guys. Sorry. But
No.
yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. I think it's complete crap.
Well,
Right.
Amy Zimmercheck, Eric says this could be tied up in the courts. What's your thought on this? Obviously, I would imagine you think that Alec needs to hand over some money, but will it be, with your legal expertise, will it be a difficult challenge going through the court system to squeeze that out of his hands?
I don't, it shouldn't be. I think that the courts are really getting tired of the foolishness. One thing that is incredibly frustrating still is that, I still have, clearly I'm not charging enough money, because I'm not getting paid those kinds of fees. And, I still have people, and maybe if I were, the people that I were representing would have already had their trials, but I have people who have been awaiting trials for years, YEARS, freaking years. And, they haven't gotten any kind of justice. And now what Alec and his team are doing are clogging up the courts more. I know it's more of a civil side, but still it clogs up court time that could be used, for people who actually need to get in the court process. It is incredibly frustrating, but I do think that the judges have, especially now that the conviction has been had, I think the judges are trying to make swift I mean, the fact that you already have a hearing, Eric, coming up at the beginning of the month,
Yeah.
it tells me that they're trying to move these things swiftly, because it slows down money for the victims. It slows down the entire process for everybody. And that's not true justice.
Joel, just so you know that he doesn't have the money in his hands. We were able to get a court-appointed receiver, John Lay and Peter McCoy, the former U.S. attorney. So they have gone out and marshaled over the last year and a half every asset that Alex had that could be found. So they have all the money. Dick and Jim are asking the court to order them to release the money. So we do have a basis to get the money. What's going to end up happening, it's going to be like the 9/11 fund. If you're a victim of Alex's fraud, you'll make an application, and then there'll be a panel that determines how much recovery you got and how much more you should get. And so there'll be an equitable division. So I think there'll be an orderly process. But Amy is so correct. I mean, how does Dick Harpootlian get to push this case to the front of the list when people have been sitting in jail in Lexington on a murder case since 2017, I heard?
And Eric, how much money is in that Alex Murdaugh pool to be distributed out?
Not as much as we would like or you would think, but I think there's probably will be maybe 900,000, maybe a little bit more. But certainly we don't know where that 8 million or more that he stole from clients went.
I just want to say that I'm not sure that he got his money's worth for what he paid. Just to say that out loud.
That's a different day, Amy.
I mean, Eric, is there any kind of investigation into where these funds are? Because he's
the FBI's been doing it. They're tracking and tracing. A lot of it is in what they think ghosted names and partnerships that people were holding it equitably for him. And there's always the rumor that because he was constantly going over to the islands, to St. Martin's, that maybe some money's there. The FBI will get to the bottom of it sooner or later, or Alex will talk. Alex will end up talking.
It's always offshore. Thanks to LFM for becoming a YouTube member. I'd love to get everyone's reaction to the next question. And Amy Lawrence Lovely, to you first. We've had time to breathe now since the Alex Murdaugh conviction. You've had time to ruminate, think about it. What's your biggest takeaway?
Justice was served. I mean, I think that's what we saw, and it was swift, and that felt good. Like, it kind of restored our faith in humanity in the system, because for so long we're disappointed in it. But this kind of rang true, and everybody knows I struggled with this case for a long time. It drove Amy Z crazy because I was playing devil's advocate constantly, literally sometimes. I guess we now know literally. But I think as it progressed and the story unfolded and the evidence unfolded, because so much of it was under kind of lock and key and we didn't know about it, that we realized that he really did do it. And it broke my heart, because I wanted to believe that he didn't do it. I think we all kind of hoped in our heart that he didn't. But as it showed us that he did. And then, I watched a lot of people's, a lot of attorneys' comments on all kinds of, on this show, on a lot of different shows. And they really thought that his county would give him the extra benefit of the doubt, that he would still get that Murdoch name, would still get him somewhere. And when it came back in such a quick verdict, I mean, I think that spoke volumes, and it kind of restored our faith in the system, especially here in South Carolina. Yeah,
we look good to the world, guys. Our profession really got stung hard by Alex's games and different things that he did. And our state had a black eye, and we always are the butt of a lot of jokes because of where we're ranked on a lot of things, on education and different things. People like to make fun of South Carolina, but we really showed how justice works. Exactly what Amy said. We showed that you can have a trial, that you have a judge that's reserved, with good temperament, that's smart, that isn't a Lancito like in the OJ case. You saw excellent lawyering. You saw competent witnesses. You saw mostly female law enforcement witnesses who were credentialed and educated and spoke well. Then you saw a resounding, incredibly guilty verdict. That's what they held him to be, incredibly guilty. And then when it was over, there was no rioting. Even people who were on different sides of the fence, people who thought that Alex was, there should be a hung jury, or the government didn't meet its burden. everybody got along. Look, I want to ask you guys, did you ever hear anybody say Alex is innocent? I heard a lot of people say the government didn't prove their case. But Sarah, what do you think? Did you hear people say Alex is innocent?
Never.
Never.
And I repeatedly explained the difference between someone being innocent and someone being not guilty. It's just not proven. But
Right.
no, never heard that. Everyone was like, it doesn't look good. Doesn't look good. I don't know if they I don't know that the state proved their case, but I didn't hear that at all. I heard a lot of people saying, how could someone do this? I
Right.
don't understand, but I never heard that.
I heard a lot. I don't think he pulled the trigger, but I think he was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or he knows. Or he knows.
I was in TJ Maxx because when my kids are basketball and I can run away for like 30 minutes, I take the moment. And I was watching the trial, like playing catch up with it, like in my little cart as I'm strolling around. And the lady in the jewelry section goes, I've been watching that all day. I go, yeah, what do you think? She goes, well, what do you think? I said, what? I'm a lawyer. What I think doesn't matter. I think, what do you think? And she said, I think something ain't right about that man. And I think he was there at the very least. And I said, I think you hit the nail on the head, man.
Well, listen, I'll tell you, we are covering the Lori Vallow Daybell trial out of Boise, Idaho right now. Another wacky case with a lot of bodies that have piled up.
Sure,
and,
five of them.
Yeah, 5 of them. And South Carolina has a special place in my heart. You guys were very attached to your state, super interested in it. There are obviously attorneys in Idaho who are very interested, but they would admit not to the degree that you guys were in this case, even though it is super high profile. So kudos to you guys for caring about your state and what goes on in it. And kudos to Diana for becoming a YouTube member. And Jennifer, words of encouragement. Eric is back in the house. Knee surgery is rough without complications. Praying for you, Eric.
Thanks, Jennifer.
STS Nation is the best. Janice says you will recover. And Michelle, the mother in the group, please don't get addicted to those painkillers, Eric. We need you.
I stopped them on Tuesday. I want everybody to know.
Before you know it, you'll be taking mayonnaise jars of opioids. And
I stopped Tuesday. I cut them out beginning on Friday, weaned off, and I'm off since Tuesday, and I'm okay.
Ellie says she's going to make you chicken soup. If you get up to $50,000 a week in opioids, let me know.
Okay.
That's always a bad sign.
Yeah.
And Jill says hello from Napa. Sarah, to you, what was your takeaway now that you've had time to reflect? You've got Palmetto Prime Time, the podcast. So what have you guys been talking about on that in relation to Alex Murdaugh?
We're still trying to help people understand what the system really is all about. Because, so often people think, law and order, what they see on court TV is this, we don't have a lot of, this is what this means. What you're seeing, this is what this is. This is why this is. So we're trying to do a lot of that. We just had on Director Sterling. He was on our podcast today. He is the director of the South Carolina Department of Corrections. He took us through a day in the life of an inmate. What sort of things have they got for, what would the things that Alex Murdaugh would be doing? What would he be, privy to? What about people who are, going to be released? What can we expect from that? It's an important, conversation and an important part of the system. So, we're trying to still, I think I'm a teacher at heart. So always trying to make things interesting and make things make sense for people. Because if you're just watching stuff, you don't know what it means or why we do it, then what's the point? We want people to understand the system. That's the most important thing to me.
And I was going to save this for last because that's where Alex Murdaugh deserves to be now. But Sarah brought it up. He is obviously a convicted double murderer, and he was just assigned to a new maximum security prison, the McCormick Correctional Institution. It houses a total of 1,100 plus adult male inmates. It's been the scene of several violent crimes and riots in recent years. He is being housed in an 8 by 10 foot cell with a bed, a toilet, and a sink all crammed inside. And his unit only holds 28 inmates, and their location is not disclosed for safety and security reasons. So he is living a very unpleasant life and must be looking over his shoulder quite a bit because there's a lot of people in the joint who are probably not pleased to see him there.
I disagree.
I do too.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the state has a very big incentive to make sure that he stays healthy and safe. And I think he's being watched. And I think the guards have caretakers for him. The worst thing for our state could be if he goes to jail and something happens in prison, that something would happen to him. I don't think our director of corrections would want that. So I think he's going to be alone a lot, recreating alone, maybe for 1 hour at 2 a.m. But I do believe he's going to be safe. That's just my opinion.
Nobody's going to shank him.
Yeah.
He's going to be there writing people's appeals, being the free lawyer in jail, pointing out.
And that's what I was going to say. Amy's exactly right. The thing that he did, even in Alvin S. Glenn, and I represent a lot of people that have been in and out and through Alvin S. Glenn, and a lot, or not a lot, but some are still in. But I'll tell you, he finds a way to adapt. I don't think it's that hard for him to adapt to that kind of lifestyle, because I think he is so narcissistic and can adapt to anything. But no, he has already, I have 2 inmates that I'm representing on appeal in, that are stationed in McCormick, and he is not shying away. He's not hiding. He is like, he's trying to become in the mix. He is, he is trying to adapt to absolutely, to absolutely life in there, that the life that he wants. He's already wheeling and dealing. He's, like Amy said, trying to offer legal advice. I don't know that I would take legal advice from somebody who doesn't even know what a habeas is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. Because
he did fight.
I mean,
he did fight it. Yeah. He fought now Alvin Glenn, and he's a pretty big guy, former football player. I don't know if anybody saw it, but during one of the bond hearings, he had cuts on his face and on his knuckles. So from what I understand, he gives as good as he gets.
Eric, first rule of prison, you walk in, you pick out the biggest guy, and you just start going at it, and you just like let everybody know you're not to be with.
And y'all, let's not forget too that everybody in the Department of Corrections gets a tablet. So he's getting these quote unquote emails. He's got a lot of these really love letters that he's getting.
Did you read those? Oh, those were so offensive to me.
He's in prison, and he's the most unfortunate looking person I've ever seen in my whole life. Okay,
yeah, that's a whole other show. Women that are obsessed with men in prison. But
Amy Z,
you're a wise woman. What was your takeaway from this whole saga that is not over yet? And we're going to get into Stephen Smith in a moment.
Well, it's certainly not over for me, because I have the co-defendant who I still have all of my cases pending.
How is cousin Eddie? How is cousin Eddie?
He's I'd say he's fantastic. Actually, I got just talked to him earlier today. He's out. I got him out on bond on Monday of last week.
Free Eddie.
Yeah, free Eddie. And it was it was a lot, but I'll tell you, he in fact, just today when I was talking to him, he has set a doctor's appointment for Monday, because he is just still his medical care was so low, and it's I understand that it's difficult to provide medical care to inmates, especially when he has the kind of problems that he had, but it was minimal, and it kept him alive, but just barely.
Did he gain 65 pounds, Amy?
He got a little chubby. I know that.
He gained 60. How do you gain 60?
Well, and a lot of it is bloat weight too. But I mean, I remember because I emailed him a lot, and so I didn't have as much face-to-face interaction because it's so far away. But I mean, it's not that far. It's like 25 minutes, but 25 minutes there, 25 minutes back, and then you have to wait for them to bring them down. It's just easier to email. But there were times that I did need to go see him, and I remember the first time. I think I even texted Amy a picture. Like the first time that I went to go after this significant weight gain, I was so taken. I was speechless, which I'm never speechless. I was speechless. And I immediately got his medical records, and his blood pressure was constantly in the triple and double digits. His sugars were ranging from like 205 to 310.
Wow.
And so, a lot of it was just such poor medical, it was keeping him alive, but now, you know, and then the kinds of foods that they eat in there. And so he's had a real hard time adapting to being back out and eating just normal foods. And the medications that he was on, I'm telling you, would kill an elephant. And so I know his pain was so bad in there. And so now he's working with his doctors to get back on the spinal injections, to get back on those things. So he, but he's certainly thankful to be out. I don't think he would have made it another month, to be honest. But
Wow,
so
that's
the
scary.
takeaway,
Scary.
it really is terrifying. But the takeaway for me, it's interesting because John Meadors has been phenomenal. He has been a great asset to the Attorney General's office. He and I have been friends. I've known him for 15 years, but I'll tell you, he is a man of his word. And we had prepped Eddie to testify numerous times, and I think he was ready. And John, of course, couldn't make any promises, but certainly said, I will, tell the judge when it comes time for your bond that you were, cooperative and willing to cooperate. And he did. I think he went above and beyond. I think he did exactly that, which, sometimes I lose faith in these government people, and Creighton has a job to do, but, for Creighton to on one hand say, we're going to fight corruption and we're going to, bad lawyers, bad cops, people who do bad things. But then you have somebody who testified under oath that they lied to the state grand jury, and they haven't done anything with that. So it's easy at times to lose faith in what prosecutors say. But I'm in an interesting position now because, they've spent 7 weeks saying Alec was a liar. Alec did this, Alec did that. And a lot of the roadside, not really, 95% of the roadside shooting arrest was because of Alec's word. And so I really think that case is going to go by the wayside. And I think that, we'll be able to work out something on his state grand jury cases. But so the takeaway for me is, even though the kind of big firework has gone off, the little tendrils that are going to fall from that are going to fall for quite some time, I think.
I think Eddie is just as much a victim as everybody else. When you look at the evidence and you see everybody just kind of trusted Alex for his word because he's a lawyer, right? And his dad was a prosecutor and he was a prosecutor, and they all expected that he was doing the right thing because no one would expect him to do, all these crazy things. And Eddie just believed him like everybody else.
Maybe. I'm going to go only on maybe there. Don't forget Amy and the other Amy. You guys are my friends, but
whatever.
Eric, you do know that he was, a transporter of some drugs, and more importantly, he was the recipient, not the ultimate beneficiary, but the recipient of $2.2 million of laundered money through him, which he probably gave back to Alex. Not saying that he took that money, but he wasn't a total innocent because he's not.
But Eric, you gotta admit, just like the little guy, the young guy who was the runner that was running and cashing checks for him, and everybody else, there were so many of people that loved him and liked him.
And that's the problem. And that's the problem, is that he wasn't the only one doing he wasn't the only one bringing it.
I agree.
The best part about the Palmetto panel, I don't even have to be here. I love it. Happens every time, and it's the best. Ann Taylor, lest you think that this is not a global show, Ann writes, I've made a live. Hi, all from Tasmania.
Wow.
Yes, as always. Thank you. And then Harold, anything but dull, a friend of the show. I'm all for good defense lawyers, but Harpootlian's rebuttal cross of Ronnie Crosby was beyond the pale. Crosby embarrassed Harpootlian anyway. Eric, your takeaway from all of this. And, you were on TV every single day. What's it like with a little bit of the hype wearing off now?
It's good. I'm a full-time practicing lawyer, which, and so for a while, my clients like seeing me on TV, but after a while they're like, okay, when are you going to start tending to my matters? So it's nice to get back to my family. It's nice to be practicing law somewhat from my bed, because of my surgery. But my takeaway is I thought it was great for the world to see how justice works, a trial. Because when you watch it on TV, like Amy said, or Sarah said, or, it's blipped. They see a trial, it's 30 minutes. Oh, that's great. No, you actually see how expert witnesses get qualified. You see how evidence goes through the court. You see how arguments are made. And the intelligence of the people that followed the Murdaugh trial was amazing to me, because I get a lot of feedback on my podcast. The listeners really got educated on the law. And I tend to think that South Carolinians, as citizens now, we have a pretty good understanding of the justice system. We know when it works, we know when it doesn't, we know when it's fair, we know when it's unfair. And I think Judge Newman did such a great job that justice was done. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. You saw justice being done.
Catherine writes, Alec worked very hard to earn his bed at Kirkland. He's in a new prison now. I hope he enjoys his retirement under lock and key. David asking, how does one become a YouTube member? Through Patreon? Patreon and becoming a YouTube member are two separate things. The chief marketing officer, AKA my wife, should have a link in the summary of this show that would take you to both places. The short answer is I have no idea. I just host a show. Eric, I should have asked you this earlier, but I kind of didn't on purpose. So Sandy Smith was quoted as saying, my baby is back in his final resting place after the exhumation, and he was placed back at his gravesite in the cemetery. How is she doing?
She is doing remarkably well. This is a woman that for 8 years was screaming with a bullhorn by herself, not with a lot of money, saying that there was an injustice done to her son, that it wasn't a hit and run, that he was killed intentionally. And no one really listened, because he, like a lot of other people, can be a forgotten person or a forgotten victim. He became a part of the Murdaugh story because, and it was always like 1/5 of the piece of the cake. So if you watch the documentary, Stephen Smith was always 1/5. But he became part of the story because Randall Murdaugh, and in the investigation, the Murdaugh name was constantly being bandied around in the investigative file. And so after the Murdaugh trial got done, Mandy Matney and Liz Farrell started a GoFundMe for Sandy Smith, and incredibly raised over $100,000. So they came to me and said, well, look, we got the money now to exhume Stephen. Will you do us this favor? You have a little bit of recognition from the trial and from the Satterfields and some of the other clients. And I said I would. So I promised two things: that I would get the body exhumed and I would get a second autopsy done. And within 2 weeks, we were able to accomplish that. But more importantly, Chief Keel called me on the phone and said that I can make a public statement that South Carolina has now changed its position, that Stephen Smith was the victim of a homicide and not of a hit and run. And so I've been working hand in hand for the past 3 weeks with Chief Keel and SLED. We were able to get the body exhumed on a Friday morning. I went through all the red tape. You got to get the coroner, you got to get DHEC, you got to get the funeral homes. Everybody's got to sign off. You got to get permits. And I was able to get him exhumed, taken to Florida, an autopsy be done by a forensic anthropologist, and a regular forensic autopsy being done. But because it's much harder when somebody's been buried for 8 years as opposed to doing an autopsy on somebody that died yesterday. And then we were able to get him back and get him reinterned at 3:00 on Sunday without the media knowing we did it. And it was coordinated with SLED. So Sandy Smith was extremely pleased. We're waiting for the results. They'll be given to SLED, and SLED is full bore into this investigation. I have the promise by the chief that they've reallocated all of the Murdaugh agents to now look into the Stephen Smith murder. And we're hopeful we'll find something. Look, for 8 years, Stephen was pounding on the coffin saying, I didn't get hit by a car. I died by, intentional act. And so now I think Sandy feels like Stephen can rest in peace. So whatever comes from it now, I think we've done a pretty decent job.
And Space Coast, who's moderating, shout out to Space Coast, a big friend of the show, has put up the YouTube address there. For those of you who don't know, because not everyone knows, July 8th, 2015, Stephen Smith, then a 19-year-old nursing student at Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College. He was found dead from what was initially described as blunt force trauma on a rural road in Hampton County. The case was ruled a hit and run with no suspects arrested. Smith was openly gay and a high school classmate of Alex Murdaugh's oldest son, Buster. Witnesses interviewed as part of all this original investigation repeatedly implicated Buster as having been involved in a relationship with Stephen, but the case went cold. Not long ago, just a few weeks ago, 2 people of interest were named, none of them being Buster. Buster put out a statement saying, please leave him alone. Sarah, again, you're the expert here when it comes to victims. Why did Sandy Smith have to wait for Alex Murdaugh to get tried to finally kind of get on the bicycle to justice? Should it have happened much sooner?
Absolutely. It's complete bullshit that it took 8 years and a complete.
There's the Amy Lawrence in you.
Oh, look at this.
Amy's like, she did it. It is. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that you have to literally hold people accountable in front of a camera and say, you didn't do your job. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. No one cares when, the mom is calling, writing letters, all of that for years and years and years. But if you do it publicly, it's really amazing how fast crap happens when it's like, oh, you're not doing your job. Well, we want to do our job because, thousands, millions of people are watching. I hate it because I wanted to say, Eric, I am so grateful that, you got involved in this case and that you got the second autopsy done, but please don't take all of SLED away from the rest of us, because I can tell you, I have a lot of cases that mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters have been waiting for years as well to have their day as well. I'm just joking with you, Eric.
Yeah, I want to say something that's important. South Carolina Highway Patrol had the case from 2015 to 2021. In 2021, they transferred the case over to SLED. SLED wanted the case from the start. SLED and some of the Highway Patrol officers disagreed with Dr. Erin Presnell, who did the autopsy in MUSC. She's the one who said that it happened as a result of being hit by a car. SLED did not release the investigative file. Chief Keel is very upset that the Highway Department in 2021 released the investigative file. To answer your question, why they waited until Alex was convicted was answered to me by Chief Keel. And he said, Eric, we made the strategic decision that we had to get a conviction of Alex so that people will feel free to come forward and talk, that the yoke, that the stranglehold that the Murdaughs had on that low country is now, they think, broken, that people came into the courtroom, they testified under oath, they were clear in what they were saying. And now the only way this is going to get solved is if somebody comes forward and give some information. It's not going to be solved by DNA or scientific. So maybe we can disagree with why Chief Keel waited until he got the conviction, but that is his reason that he gave us.
We definitely disagree, Eric, but that's fine. We can
very convenient for Chief Keel. I mean, what about the year's backlog of rape kits that have not been tested? Or, the list can go on and on and on how SLED is failing us and how they can do better. And
they do have the rape kit of Stephen Smith. There was it was said that it was lost. It's not. Now, I will tell you this. You guys are going to be shocked. Amy brings up an amazing point. I learned that 60% of the rape kits that are taken are not tested.
We have over 2,400 in the state of South Carolina that are currently untested. And that's just what's in SLED's hands. That's
why is it? Sarah, why is it a lack of man or woman power to?
I had a meeting with SLED probably 2 months ago, and their explanation is they don't have the manpower, the woman power to be able to do this. They don't have, they can send these kits out of state. But the problem when you send kits out of state, defense attorneys know you've got to bring people in if you're going to try that case. Are we going to get people in from Colorado to come and testify in this rape case? You got to pay for that, all of that. So it's problematic for prosecutors if we're sending all of these kits out, but it's also problematic for victims because we don't know if these kits are what's in these kits. Are they going to hit? Are they going to have some sort of evidence that could really break this case?
Is there a universal data bank, Sarah, that they test from, or does South Carolina have a different data bank? How do they work? I don't understand how a rape kit works.
So I'll tell you. So with the rape kits, South Carolina's backlog is not as bad as other states' backlogs. I will tell you that. That doesn't mean it's not bad.
It's only like 4 years backlog.
It's not. I mean, it doesn't mean it's not bad. But
bad.
they can run these kits through once they are tested. And here's the thing: every kit is not going to be qualified or going to have necessarily a DNA hit that they can run through CODIS or any of those things. And of course, if they get a hit, they're still going to have to get, a buccal swab from the defendant with
Right.
the Schmerber hearing, all of that kind of stuff. That's like way out yonder. But the problem is that they don't have the qualified analysts per SLED to do the testing here in state. So the question is, what do we do? Do we send them out of state? But even I think it's only about 150 kits that they can test per month to try and get out of this backlog. That's the backlog.
Sounds like they need to hire somebody. I mean, we spend millions of dollars on complete horseshit.
I think they're trying, but it's just it's
how much is it going to cost us? I'll raise the money. I mean, there's a reason why Hargitay has a nonprofit organization, because this tells you where women stand in the state of South Carolina and in the United States, right? Women and children are subpar citizens in this state and across the United States, which is why these cases I represent rape victims every day. I'm an attorney for the Rape Crisis Center. I go in and kick in doors and show my ass every day because doctors don't want to do rape kits, because nobody wants to test them. Here's a great example. This makes me so mad.
I love this woman. Don't you love this passion, Joel?
Every time she's on, I gotta hit that
serial rapist in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, a serial fucking rapist. Raped women for 14 years. And guess what? SLED never put his DNA through CODIS. Never once. He raped, I think they said 20 some women.
And I'll tell you.
And no one ever bothered to check to put his DNA through CODIS?
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think it happens. I think it happens in every state. I think law enforcement is overworked.
No one's acknowledging it. And when you don't acknowledge it, you can't change it. So what are we doing to fix it? And the answer is we're doing nothing. We're passing the buck and saying, well, we can't send it out of state. No, you can send it out of state. They do it every day. In a murder case, they do it every day. There are other options, but they choose not to do them.
And Amy Z, to you, Iris Hewlett,
sorry,
right?
My internet. There's a storm here, so the internet is kicking me out. But I'll tell you, it's frustrating to me. When I hear that whole we don't have enough people or we don't have enough money bullshit, because we have cops that are wasting their time, writing tickets with simple possession of marijuana cases, and things that are unimportant, but they can boost numbers so that they can get money and they can arrest these, little kids or young kids and things like that. But the bigger cases, the cases that require, the time and attention of law enforcement are just, continuing to be backlogged and say, oh, well, we just don't have anybody to do any of this. And it's, it's completely ridiculous. It's unfair. It's unfair. It's extremely unfair to the victims. It's unfair to people who get arrested and can't, fight because, the evidence isn't being tested. It's a problem all the way around. And
I'll donate the money. I'll donate the money to hire one DNA analyst. What's it going to cost me? $60,000
to just do that, right?
A year? I'll pay for one of them. I'll cover one salary.
I think they've got room to hire at least 15 more analysts at SLED. That tells you how understaffed they are right now. And let me tell you, I mean, no disrespect, and I apologize, Joel, for just jumping in here. This is your show, but I got to say this. I, like Amy, work with victims every single day, and it pisses me off because the Murdoch case tells me that SLED and South Carolina law enforcement has the capability to do things. So what do we tell the thousands of victims and cases for that Amy are defending or whatever, what are we telling those people? Because it can be done. That's what the Murdoch case showed me. And so
what they're telling them is they don't matter. I mean, and the answer is they don't fucking matter. They don't fucking matter because they're not some high profile attorney and they don't matter. And that is incredibly frustrating. Sorry to cut you off, Sarah, but you know exactly what the answer is. And it's because they don't matter.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I was okay. Just
Sorry,
good to
Joel.
know.
I'm fired up, y'all. I have sweaty armpits. Okay, I'm so fired up.
I can't wait for the emails on this show. You guys you can't control your guests or curse. Look at these sweet women, and they're all cursing like
They're
sailors.
passionate.
Yeah,
They're passionate.
Eric and I not cursing at all. By the way, Cynthia Grand says hello from Mobile, Alabama. We're happy to have you. Apologies for the harsh language. I use it off camera. Amy Lawrence uses it on camera. Amy Z and Sarah. It happens.
We're
Iris,
dabbling.
everyone is. Eric, Iris
So
writes,
fun.
I don't understand why a second autopsy was not performed in 2015, considering there were discrepancies in his manner of death. Any answer to that question or concern?
They rarely do that. For a high profile possible victim, they would, but they're not going to do that. Aaron Presnell, under normal circumstances, is a highly qualified pathologist, and the South Carolina Highway Department was running the investigation. It's rarely done that you could get a second autopsy. You could pay for it yourself, but of course she didn't have the money to do that.
And David figured this out real quickly. We appreciate that. He became a YouTube member. Is that an NJ on your shirt, David? Is that New Jersey, my home state? I think I like you even more. That's my hometown right there on my hat. He says, you're welcome. I love this channel, especially Carm. Carm is making her comeback this Sunday night. We've actually got female ex-cons coming on the show on Sunday to talk about what Lori Vallow's life behind bars right now is like and what it could be for the rest of her life, because it appears that it is headed that way. And Iris Hewlett writes, I'm confused. This podcast is not about Stephen Smith. It is hard to corral people from South Carolina, so I'm bringing us back there. We are talking about it. So as Eric said, his body was exhumed. It was a complicated process. It had to be taken to Tampa for a very special sort of autopsy, being that was almost 8 years that he was unfortunately buried for. Kenneth Kinsey says in a quote here, and you know him from the Alex Murdaugh trial. He's with the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Department. He says, I do know it was a success. They say they did collect evidence. It was very good documentation, and everybody was upbeat about the information that was collected, Kenneth Kinsey said. And that's not always the situation when you exhume someone after so many years.
Yeah, he had water in his coffin, Joel, and we hired Kenny Kinsey to kind of be the interface between us and because we're not law enforcement, obviously, and SLED, and he has relationships with SLED, and we put out a reward if somebody wants to give a tip that leads to the arrest of somebody. So we're getting a lot of tips. So I hired Kenny Kinsey to filter through these tips and see if there are any good tips. And we've actually gotten some good tips, some people that Stephen went to high school with, that knew who he had dated and knew who he had conflicts with. So we're learning new things that we didn't know existed. So it's pretty good.
Eric, there were two, by the way, Andy School is a friend of the show. Hello to all the best guests, STS Nation. Eric, hope your knee is healing well. Good job, Amy, getting Eddie out. The weight gain is so bad for his spinal surgery history. Hats off to your hard work. So STS Nation, giving you guys all a much-deserved round of applause. Two people were named as persons of interest, Patrick Wilson and Sean Connolly. Obviously, neither of them are Murdochs, which would make Buster's statement more salient at this point. But what's going on there? Do we have any update on this part of the investigation, Eric?
We do and we don't. SLED is conducting it. Chief Keel shares a lot of information with me, but he doesn't tell me those kind of things, or some things he tells me, and he asked me to keep quiet because they're in the middle of questioning somebody. I think it's a mistake for news agencies to name people as persons of interest. One, it has a tendency to chill others that may want to come forward and talk, because from what I understand, when a local news agency named those two people, they got death threats over the weekend. So it's a very dangerous thing to do.
They're young guys. I think they were in high school when this happened. So
when you start naming people of interest, I just don't think that's the right way to conduct an investigation.
And Eric, I mean, obviously this is your wheelhouse right now, but Stephen Smith's mom, she fired off a letter to the FBI back in 2016.
She
And
did.
she called out Buster. Have you had a conversation that you can share with us?
Well, I'm not going to reveal attorney-client privilege information. I was not representing her then. All I can say is, to my knowledge, I have no direct or indirect information that would implicate Buster Murdaugh at this time.
Can I say something? God bless
Sure.
y'all. It makes me cry when I think about it because I'm a mama. God bless Sandy Smith for never giving up. You know what I
Sure.
mean? And being relentless in her pursuit of knowing what happened to her baby.
Yeah.
Like everybody deserves a mom like Sandy Smith
That's beautiful.
that would never give up. Like, it just makes me cry thinking about it. Like,
I'll
God
tell
bless
her.
her for
I'm going to
never
tell her. I'm
giving
going to
up.
tell her.
Angel Ties here. Hi, SDS Nation from Belgrade, Serbia. Fantastic guest, as per usual. Thank you. It's interesting. I am writing a book about my mother right now, who's from the border of Yugoslavia and Serbia. And today I was writing the part about her escape from the war, and she was hidden in Belgrade. And I was just writing about it. So you are on my mind, Belgrade. And it's also why I'm kind of my mind is a little mush right now. We'll get back to Stephen Smith in a second, but there's another guy, Russell Lafitte, Sarah Ford, the former CEO of the Palmetto State Bank, and he asked for a new trial because of what happened with Alex Murdaugh, and the judge told him to buzz off. Was that the right move from the judge?
Judge Gergel is one of my favorites. Absolutely love him. Absolutely love his wife, who was a mentor and professor of mine at Columbia College. Wonderful people, smart man, and 100% right in slapping Russell Lafitte down again. Absolutely ridiculous that oh no, the answer is no. Let me ask again. Oh, not that way. Let me ask again. It's over. Stop. I'm really
Suck it. I believe he said suck it. I heard him.
I mean, it was like he said it in the nicest possible way, like stop wasting my time.
But
Stop
it's the
wasting my
it was the
time.
dumbest move by
Oh.
Mark Moore, his new defense attorney, before sentencing, criticizing the trial counsel, Bart Daniel. Even though somebody can criticize, sitting where we sit, the job that Bart Daniel may have done. But before a client is sentenced, you don't hire a new lawyer to criticize the trial counsel. And Judge Gergel, I'm telling you, is going to come down on Russ Lafitte like a ton of bricks because he sees no contrition. He sees him blaming Bart Daniel. And then in this latest motion, he's trying to say that Alex Murdaugh should be believed because Alex in his trial said that Russell Lafitte was not part of a conspiracy. He didn't do anything wrong. He didn't do anything. I didn't tell him to steal money. He didn't steal money. The fact of the matter is Judge Gergel quoted the jury and Judge Newman in his motion and said they both found him to be not credible throughout his entire trial. So why am I now going to bring him in my courtroom under Rule 33 and say that if I let him testify, a standard under Rule 33 is it would lead to an acquittal? So I think it is just wasting time, and I believe that Judge Gergel is going to hammer him. I'm interested in what you ladies think.
Could not be a less credible witness than Alex Murdaugh. Like,
Right.
I mean, it was like, are you kidding me? Come on. I am so ready for this sentencing to happen because I think exactly what Russell Lafitte deserves is going to happen. And I think that, I think the court can get behind someone saying, you know what, I screwed up. I trusted this guy. He was my friend.
Right.
He had a lot of money, a lot of influence in town. And I just screwed up, Judge. I messed up. Please, I'm falling at the mercy of the court. This guy's like not even
that we
close
can
to
buy. That
How-
makes sense.
How much time is he going to get for this?
Somewhere probably between 9 and 17 years, I would
I say
think.
12. My money was on 12 before
Yeah.
that motion, so maybe 15.
I was thinking 15. 15's
Yeah.
my number. That's my number.
I love how he's like, but the guy who starts off every answer with, "You're right, Mr. Waters. I am a liar. I'm a cheater. I'm a stealer." We're gonna like this is the guy who's like, "Word, we're gonna take for gold.
He's going to come and save Russell Lafitte. Come on, ridiculous. And the
Russell
fact that
Lafitte
those
is
lawyers
trash.
came in and slapped around the previous lawyers who were with him through the entire trial, did the best they could with what they had, and then you're going to do it now, I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Plus, the law is clear, and Amy's know this, and Sarah, that if a witness is going to take the fifth, you can't the judge isn't going to presume that what he would testify to was going to help him. So if Alex really wanted to help Russ out, he was on the witness list. He could have come and testified. But Jim Griffin told the defense, if you call Alex, he's going to take the fifth, which means he's going to make statements that could implicate himself and the person who's on trial.
It was my fault. I veered us off the Stephen Smith path, and I'm bringing us back. Bundy Data writes, there had to be blood near the crotch because something at the scene indicated rape, and we were just talking about the rape kits and the lack of testing. Andy School chiming back in. The forensic evidence is contrary to a truck's mirror hitting a skull. From what I've heard, the skull and brain damage does not align whatsoever with a mirror, pedestrian, blunt force hit, time to get tests done. Amy Z, not to put you on the spot, do you have any sort of intuition about what went on this night? It's super mysterious. It's a remote road. These two persons of interest who were named are apparently being investigated, but not too quickly because nothing's happened in about a month's time. What's your gut telling you about what happened here?
Well, so I love to solve cases. I think that's why I'm really good at criminal defense, because one of the things that I do is solve cases, and I want all the evidence, and I want to look at it, and I want to look at it from a defense attorney's point of view. But I think all good defense attorneys look at it from a prosecution point of view. I can't even begin to speculate what happened because they are holding everything so close and so tight. And there may be a lot of things missing. One of the frustrations that I have with law enforcement, especially in this case, because again, I know it was like the highway patrol versus SLED, and I think highway patrol was the one that was called out because it was on the road, and then they took over for a long time, but there's a crime, and I tell this to juries all the time, a crime scene tells a story, and every little bit of evidence tells a story. And when you lose the opportunity to know that, or when you lose the opportunity to, I've seen a few of the pictures that, have been released. I certainly hope that there's more, but I fear that there's not. But when you lose that, I think that you really lose the ability to understand about what happened that night. And one of the good things about the light that's been shed on this case, I hope is that they understand that initial investigation is so important. I hope what doesn't get lost. I'm Eric, I don't know how you feel about this, but I think that you would feel that Sandy doesn't care if it was a Murdoch or not a Murdoch. She just wants to know.
Yeah.
And so what I hope is that, sometimes when I listen to podcasts or people, and they want to do what I think law enforcement does a lot of times, which is kind of put blinders on, and look. And I think that's what is such an injustice to victims across the state, is that if you just you get this theory and then you put these blinders on, and
right.
and you just want to, you want it to be something, then you're not really going to be able to find out. So, I think something incredibly tragic that happened. I think that right off the red flags of his, claiming that he was out of gas, but his wallet being in his vehicle, things like that. I think there are things that do not make sense. And I think that I hope that a thorough investigation can be done. But then I'm going to put on my defense attorney hat, which is what I wear most of the time. And I'll tell you that, if these two suspects, are arrested, I fear that the evidence will be able to be attacked by any decent defense attorney, because it has gone on so long. And that's not justice. That's not justice for Stephen. That's not justice for his mama. And that's not justice for anyone who gets arrested. So, I think Eric agrees with me that, we really, at this point, people who know something are really going to be the ones that have to come forward, because I think relying on this forensic evidence or, this investigation is not going to, I think it's going to not be fruitful. But I think Sandy and Stephen both deserve to know the truth. And I think who's ever accused ultimately, deserves to have that evidence stacked up against them. And so, I hope that, I don't know what happened. I certainly, I hate to speculate because, you could do that all day long. But I hope that law enforcement takes a look at least at this, especially since it is out there, and said, we should have done a better job. We need to do better jobs from here forward to get victims. And, maybe Sandy, she may not ever, I hope she does. I hope and pray that she does get the answers that she needs. But maybe her impact will be that it makes a difference for the next Sandy Smith, for the next.
Well, the real problem is, the real problem, Amy, and that was so well said, is there was this conflict between the highway patrol and SLED on who was going to take over the investigation, because it happened on a road. The highway patrol said, oh, we're going to do it. But they're really not in the best position if it's an intentional killing to collect evidence and secure the scene and start the investigation. SLED had about a 5-year delay in when they got all the information to take over this investigation. Not that I'm apologizing, but you're right. The territorial disputes can really affect in the law enforcement how an investigative scene is ultimately discovered and secured.
What's funny is normally when we see like police departments and jurisdictions, usually they're fighting to get it. Not everybody like saying not it, right?
Right.
Not it. But here we're saying not it. And matter of fact, I was down in that neck of the woods a couple weeks ago, and I was talking to a trooper, and I was like, God bless that trooper who went out and interviewed and made all those calls and documented everything that he did, because but for him doing that, we would have nothing to go on.
Do you know that Officer Moore is also a victim of Alex Murdaugh? That Alex stole $125,000 from him from a settlement that man needed to get back surgery.
That place is the most incestuous place I've ever seen in my whole life.
As Alec would say, what a tangled web we weave, right?
Well, he said it. He said it.
Jesus.
People are weighing in about the cussing, as you guys say in South Carolina. Leon Wright, love your guests. MC Spunky is doing shots apparently every time you guys curse, so she could be very drunk.
Very.
Essentially Combustion says never stop. Amy, we love it. Love the passion these ladies are showing. I love the swearing. They are speaking like most people want to. And then this, Eric understands passion. And thanks for saying passion, Eric. It usually gets labeled as the B word. So a surprising take from STS Nation. They don't seem too upset. A few people said F-bombs could be left out. But
listen, I'm working on it, and I've been praying about my cursing, and I'm going to do better. I promise.
But Stephanie says she doesn't really care. And you know what? I don't care that much. So Stephen Smith's boyfriend, a guy named Mark Bigheart, and we'll wrap this.
Alleged.
Oh, it is an alleged? Okay. Well, apparently he was on a text exchange.
Like a creeper.
Yeah. Well, he was on a text exchange, and he was talking about what he was hearing that night, which were these big mud tires. But I was just bringing this back to Amy Lawrence Lovely. I don't know. I mean, you're also a defense attorney, and you piece things together, and it is a bit speculative. But do you have any thoughts in your gut about what could have happened this night? Why they would have labeled it a hit and run, and now we're learning that it almost certainly was not, and it was a murder. And by the way, David is from New Jersey, so shout out to David. But Amy, your thoughts?
It kind of goes back to what I said, is like women and children are kind of second-class citizens around here, and I'd stick gay kids in that same category. He wasn't anybody important, so what's it really matter how he died? He's dead. Like, that's how they viewed it, and that's how they worked the case, and that's why they were like, not it, because he wasn't fancy enough to care about. And that's the heartbreaking part.
Yeah.
You know, when I heard this story, my gut feeling of what happened is that somebody knew exactly who Stephen Smith was and they were just screwing around with him. And somebody hung out that window of that car and they had a baseball bat or they had something, and they were probably harassing him and going past him, and they whopped him, and he paid the ultimate price for it. And they probably didn't intend to kill him. They probably just were trying to screw with him, and I'm trying to not say the F word. And that's how he died. And it's probably the saddest little death I could ever imagine. And he probably laid there by himself, not knowing what was happening to him until it was over. And that's the part that breaks my heart. But that's what I think happened. That's what my gut tells me happened.
And listen, you guys are all in the business to really help people, and you do get a sense of that. Anna Lee D says, love the attention you all are bringing to the major issues of rape kit testing. It matters. And if you don't, read this next comment from Linda Feldman. It's tough to read. And Sarah, I'd love to get your reaction to this. I am a rape survivor from 1978. A few years ago, I contacted the Minneapolis police to see if they had saved my rape kit. They laughed at me the same way they laughed at me when it originally happened. And then she went on and said they originally laughed because they said it's my word against his. It's giving me chills a little bit. Sarah, it's no laughing matter that
Sarah, sounds like we need to make a ride up to Minnesota and find this guy.
You know, Linda, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it is a brave thing just to put that out there. You know, you talking about your rape in 1978, it's powerful. Your words are powerful, and you taking ownership and you taking that power back, whether it's here in this chat or whatever you do in your daily life, it matters. And I appreciate you as a victims' rights lawyer just putting that out there, because it's important for people to talk about these things. It's hard. It's tough. The fact that law enforcement told you that it was your word against his, laughed in your face like they did 40-something years ago, it's a travesty. It is horrific. It is inexcusable. And I'll tell you, Linda, there are resources out there for people who have, you know, there are people who do the work that I do, you know, up in Minnesota, everywhere, all across the country, that we will help you find your kit. We will go through, we will work with you. We will work with law enforcement. We will get as many answers as we possibly can for you. You know, I'm a South Carolina lawyer, but I'm happy to try and put you in touch with somebody that can help you do that, because you deserve answers, whether it was one day ago or 40 years ago. You deserve law enforcement to answer for that. If that's all you can do is get answers for what happened or what they screwed up on, you deserve those answers, Linda. So I am so sorry that happened to you. Thank you for being an advocate for yourself, going back and doing that. Continue to be an advocate for you and other people. And I will tell you, we're doing it. This is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And I got to say this is near and dear to my heart. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We're doing a show next week on rape kits, you know, how they're done, why are they done, what people can learn from that. So many people think that you have to have law enforcement go with you to the hospital to have a kit done. You don't. You can go and have it done anonymously. This is a soapbox, which I'll say for my own podcast, but thank you, Linda, for sharing that. And I'm happy to write Joel, and I'm happy to try and put you in touch. I was
going to say, you can reach me, survivingthesurvivor@gmail.com, and I can connect you with Sarah. And Linda went on to write, I'm lucky I survived, yet folks don't realize how horribly it affects the whole family for life. And Sarah said that way more eloquently than I ever could, but that was over 40 years ago, and you can still see the impact. Eric, back to you quickly. And by the way, thanks to Jody for becoming a member. Eric, you mentioned it earlier. The Smith family raised over $100,000. Our GoFundMe was set up, which raised over that amount. Sandy Smith apparently allocated about $35,000 of those monies to go towards a reward for information leading to the arrest. In this case, is that reward still being made available to the public?
Oh, of course. So there's no expiration date like milk, like Alex Murdaugh put on his reward. Like he gave like a 90-day reward. I've never heard of anybody putting an expiration date on it. Of course, it's 35,000 and it may go up. I mean, if we're not getting enough response or enough tips and more money is raised by GoFundMe, I am not charging a legal fee for my services at all. And so every money is getting plowed back into this investigation or for a reward.
Someone was asking, and I don't know if any of you have the answer, when Russell will be sentenced. Is there a sentencing date? I don't think is there one, Sarah?
No, I can answer that.
Okay.
But it's close, because a lot of my clients who are Russell's victims have received their victim impact statement form. So usually when you get that, it's an indication they have a date for when you got to get it back, that you're probably about 6 weeks out.
Also, federal court is a lot different than
Totally
state court.
different.
So as you saw with state court, Alec was sentenced literally right then and there or the next day. But in federal court, there's a whole process. So probation gets involved. Once either you're convicted or you plead, once you have an adjudication of guilt, then U.S. Probation Office comes in and they do this extremely comprehensive, it's called a pre-sentence report or pre-sentence investigation. And it's, most of mine are, and these are like mostly just drug or RICO clients but even those are 50 to 60 pages. So and what they do is they detail a lot of not just the crimes, but just personal factors and things like that. I imagine that this pre-sentence investigation report will be a couple hundred pages. I think because it has to detail each of the crimes and things like that. And then the reports go out to the United States Attorney and to the defense attorneys, and they have an opportunity to file objections. It's just it's a great way to sentence. It's an absolutely different way and much more comprehensive than any state case. So I think that's probably something that most people don't know, because typically you would think somebody gets convicted, they get sentenced, but in federal court it is so different.
And let me tell you where he's going to be housed. They have to determine, there's a determination by the Bureau of Prisons that they do an assessment where it would be best to put him. They are not sending him close to South Carolina for his family, because he was not a cooperating witness, and because of some of the things he did. It wouldn't surprise me if he finds himself in Duluth, Minnesota, or somewhere in South Dakota.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Yep.
It's going to be nice and chilly there. Tanya, thank you for becoming a member. Real quick, Amy, you certainly can. Catherine says cursing is just fancy language. Some people just like plain talk, but not Amy Lawrence Lovey. Amy?
Eric, this is for Eric, because I think we all want to know, okay, because we've heard that Randy Murdoch was at the scene of Stephen Smith. Is that true?
Maybe yes, maybe no. I've been told that he was at the scene, but maybe not at the night that it happened. There's certainly an indication in the investigative file that he was there, possibly at the night that it happened. But I have heard from others that he showed up later on with an investigator, kind of looking if there was a wrongful death case.
Okay, which makes sense. I mean, that law firm owned that town. I mean, he was.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to be accident hunters. You know, we can't.
No, completely. It makes sense. I mean, we heard people talking about how Alex would get troopers and officers just to check it was their fault. You know, that's crazy. Right. I mean, how could you not make money if you were doing that? Like, hand over fist, crazy. Like, my mind is blown.
And Ketchup says, a friend of the show, yes, STS Nation Connect, love, more power to this amazing panel. And Linda Feldman, keep fighting. And Ned Smith says, and I can't agree more, nothing bland about Eric and nothing bland about Amy Lawrence either. She fights for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day in her practice at the lovely law firm. Amy was on MTV's Teen Mom 2. She loves when I say that. And she's appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Amy, your closing thoughts.
I've been on Dr. Phil, Amy. You and I got that in common.
I've also won a lot of trials. I've a couple civil rights trials. I've got a couple like cool things besides MTV under my belt. I don't know. My closing thoughts are, I really hope and pray that Sandy Smith gets the answers, whether that's a conviction or not. At least I hope that at the very least she gets answers to what happened to her little boy, because she deserves it.
Lana T says, I have to stalk this channel for lives since the notifications never work. What's up? People yell at me about stuff. I don't run YouTube. I don't know anything about YouTube. I just have my show there, but we'll get Space Coast on that. Try to figure it out, Lana. and we'll get, we'll let you know. Space Coast is here monitoring everything, so we will have him check that out. Amy Z is the owner, and by the way, I finally learned how to spell Zimmercheck. It's only taking me, I don't know, a bunch of months, but she's the owner of AJZ Law Firm. She's been voted as a member of Super Lawyers a gazillion times, and has had 10 not guilties on felony cases, including murder and rape, since 2009. Obviously, your focus is on Cousin Eddie. What's going to happen as we move forward with Cousin Eddie?
I hope justice. I hope that justice happens. I mean, that's always my goal. Even as a criminal defense attorney, which, sometimes, we take a lot of heat, but I think justice is the ultimate goal. It's why I went to law school. It's why I do what I do. I was having a conversation with Eric literally just yesterday on another case, and every case is different, and every aspect of it, you have to really think about all of the things that are involved in a case. And I think that with Eddie, I think that, thank goodness he's out. I think that we can, certainly seek justice. And it just doesn't go without saying. I mean, I hope that Sandy, gets and Stephen get the closure that they need. And I hope that law enforcement does better. I hope that this is a catalyst, to hire those people that we need, to train the people that we need, and to take the prominence of people that may or may not be involved out of it, and to focus on each and every case as important. That's what I hope.
And Papa Bear is from Moscow, Idaho, which is near and dear to our hearts here after that horrific quadruple homicide, and justice will be served there in due time. She says, thanks, Joel and guests. Terrific show with my 4 favorite guests. And Marina, another friend of the show, watching in the south of Spain. Great show, great guests, great community. And another great guy is Eric Bland. He's been a super lawyer for 197 years. He's also representing Stephen Smith's family, and he is one of the hosts of Cup of Justice, a phenomenal new true crime podcast. Eric, everyone at STS Nation is pulling for you and hoping your knee feels better and that you're back to full strength.
You've seen me fidgeting all show. I've been kind of moving around and putting ice on my knee, and yeah, I hope so too. Thanks.
It's not comfortable, so I feel your pain, not literally but figuratively. But what are you expecting with the Stephen Smith case in the coming weeks?
I don't know about coming weeks, but I'm expecting closure in some shape or form. So whether that closure results in somebody being arrested, or the state saying that there's not enough evidence to arrest somebody, but this is what we think happened. Something that can just give peace to this woman so that she can go on, because the tragedy of all tragedy is to have your child die before you. And we're all parents. And that would be the ultimate tragedy, that a child dies before a parent.
That certainly would be. Lorna says it all. Fantastic panel. Quick programming note, 12:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow. Great Scott. It's your True Crime Phil with Detective Phil Waters. He's investigated over 400 homicides for the Houston PD. And Scott Duffy, a former FBI agent out of Delaware, not far from Eric Bland's home state and town. And then Sunday night, this one right here, making her comeback. And she's going to be speaking to Carm on ex-cons. It'll be a trip to watch that. So until then, we will say, love you, America.
Joel,
love you, South Carolina.
Joel, sorry for the loss of your father.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that very much. And STS Nation has been here all the way through, and it's surreal. And it is not fun. And it is certainly not fun for my mom, who was with him for over 65 years. So, but he lives on in our memory, and I appreciate that. So
excellent.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
Stick around, guys, for 1 sec.
Good night, y'all.